Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we dig up, divide, and plant dwarf goatsbeard. So let's go. Dwarf goatsbeard, you ask? Why yes, it is such a cool plant. I've had this plant for a few years now. I bought it from my friend Linda, who has a backyard plant nursery. And honestly, I didn't know much about the plant. I just knew that it looked very interesting to me, so I wanted to have it. However, I didn't know where I was going to put it in my yard. So I put it in my backyard plant nursery, and I've had it for a few years now. And since I have not taken it and put it somewhere in my landscape, instead, what I've done with it over the last few years is I've taken it out of its pot, I've divided it, put it in multiple pots, put it back in my backyard plant nursery. In fact, I even was able to give a small piece to my sister-in-law, and I still have many pieces left. I have another goat's beard in my yard. It's a larger variety. It's very pretty. It bloomed in the springtime. But this dwarf variety, which is also a type of Aruncus, I can't say its full name, so I'm going to put it up on the screen because I don't want to butcher the name. It is very sweet, very delicate. It's a type of goat's beard that you would want to have towards the front of a flower bed or even in a rock garden. It definitely likes moisture, so you want to make sure that it's getting ample water. If you live in a warmer climate, you probably want to plant this in a shadier location. But here where I live, it's okay to put it in sun or shade as long as it's getting lots of water. Some people, when they look at this plant, they mistaken it for astilbe because the leaves are fern-like, and it really does look like a dwarf astilbe, but it's not. Don't let it fool you. It is a type of goat's beard. The plant already bloomed in the springtime, and it looked very pretty. I did enjoy it, even though it was in my nursery. It had little white, cream-colored flowers to it. So part of what we're going to do today is we're going to go shopping in my nursery. We're going to get the plants. We're going to divide the plants. We're also going to cut back the seed heads or seed pods off of it. Let's see if we can collect some seeds from it. And then after dividing the plant, we're going to get it planted out in the landscape. So let's go shopping. Here we are in my backyard plant nursery, and we've been having a drought. It's been very hot and very dry, so I've been running the sprinkler daily. But we're going to head right over to this section right down here. I tell you, there are some pretty things tucked into this nursery, and even though there are a lot of plants that I'm selling here, this is also a holding bed for plants that I've acquired over the years and where I don't know where I want to put them. So the plants that we're going to get are tucked in right over here. So let me grab them and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, for real, these are the cutest little plants ever. And I have 4 of them, which is wonderful. When I bought them, I only bought one. And again, I don't know when it was. It might have been even 3 years ago. It's been a while since I bought them. And like I said, over time, all I've done is just divide them and pot them back up. And I've kept them down in my nursery because I just don't like to buy plants and just plunk them in my landscape, nilly-willy, and then have to move them again. I would prefer to find a forever home for them. So that's basically what I've done over time. And now today is their lucky day to finally get planted out in the landscape. And they are just the sweetest little things. I'll put their dimensions in terms of how tall and wide they usually spread. And you might be wondering, why am I going to divide them? They're pretty good size right now. I might as well. I want to show you how to divide this plant in case you have it. And I might as well turn 4 plants into 8 plants. And I was looking a little bit closer at where the blooms have gone by, and it doesn't appear that they are fully gone by and that I can collect the seeds off of them. So for today, we're going to just leave them as is. And in the future, I'd like to collect the seeds off of them just to see if I can do that and if I can propagate the plant through seeds. I'm going to take you in for a closer look so you can look at the plant, and then also I can show you my process for dividing this. So let's start with taking these plants out of their pots. And you can see they are ready to come out of their pots. I know exactly where I'm going to be putting these. I've recently worked on a flower bed. It's in a shady area of my yard, and I planted some ferns there, and I also planted some hydrangeas. And I thought that these plants would look so sweet in that area. I'll be sure to add a link to that video down in the description below in case you're interested in watching that video. When it comes to dividing this plant, I'm going to be using a handsaw. It's by Corona. I'm not sponsored by them, but I love this tool. I use it quite a bit when it comes to dividing plants. And the big thing is you want to make sure that you're careful because it's sharp. And also, anytime you use garden tools, you want to make sure you sanitize them in between plants so you're not carrying disease from one plant to another. So what we can do is just lay the plant down like this. And I'm just looking for an area where I can make a division. And I'm just going to basically divide it right down the center. And before we use the tool, I always like to check and see if it is a plant that I can pull apart easily, because some perennials you can do that too. So let's take a look. And it is pretty easy to divide it, just like that. But you might have a larger clump of this perennial in your landscape, and it might not be as easy. So using some sort of tool like this handsaw might make life a little bit easier for you. But I'm pretty happy with the size of that division. I mean, I could just divide it down to teeny tiny little pieces, but we're not going to do that. We're going to leave it so that it has a little bit of an impact in the garden space. With this piece, it's a bit larger, so I can go ahead and divide this down one more time. And I think those are good sizes right there. This plant right here has a root system that's pretty dense, and it's not falling apart as easily when I try to tug at it. So we're going to go ahead and use the handsaw. So I'm going to just find a place, that looks like I can divide, knowing that I might break off some of the leaves, and that's okay. And we just turn that one piece into two, which is wonderful. Now I can take this one, and now I'm able to divide it just using my hands. I'm going to do the same process with the rest of these plants here, and then I'm going to show you where they're going to get put in the landscape. Well, we had 4 pots, and we turned the 4 plants into 10 plants, which I think is a pretty good deal. Let's go ahead and get these planted. We're on the east side of my house, and you can see that there are a lot of shade-loving plants out here. I have a large hosta garden. I have annuals, which are the impatiens that you're seeing, the pretty pink colors. And in this area down here, I had recently done a planting of a few plants, and I figured let's just keep adding to this bed. So what I did was I placed the dwarf goatsbeard towards the front. I was wondering where to put it, and initially I was going to place it towards the front of like some of these plants over here, and I thought it would get lost. And I think having the dwarf goatsbeard towards the front looks really pretty. So I just spaced them out evenly enough. I looked at basically the impatiens that I had in here, and I lined them up with some of the impatiens. So you can see this is where I've placed the dwarf goatsbeard. They'll definitely get lots of water because it stays pretty wet down here anyway. Plus I do have drip irrigation. So what I'll do is I'm going to get all of them planted but one, and then I'll just show you my process for planting them, and I'll show you what everything looks like when I'm all done. Let's face it, no plant is ever happy being kept in a pot for years on end. These plants will be so much happier in the landscape. What I'm doing is I'm just removing the mulch that's here, and now I'm just going to dig a hole, and I just want it to, it's not going to be a very deep hole. I just want it to be deep enough so I can get the roots in the ground. Just like any plant that you buy or divide and move in your landscape, when it comes to planting most perennials, including this one, you want to make sure you're not planting the crown too deep. But you absolutely want to make sure that the roots are in the soil. You don't want the roots sticking out. And now I can just backfill. I'm not adding water to this hole because irrigation ran last night and it's definitely very wet. And now I'm just putting the mulch back, and I want to make sure that it's not right up to the plant. You want to make sure the plant can breathe. Isn't that the sweetest little plant? Again, it looks like a miniature fern. I foresee fairy gardens in my near future, and I also foresee dividing this plant and moving it to lots of other areas of my yard, including my rock wall, because it would look really pretty tucked into a rock wall or a rock garden. It is competing a little bit with the begonias, in my opinion, but for this year, I think it's okay. It has a permanent home, in my opinion. Time will tell, but at least it's out of its pots. It's been divided. It adds a little bit of interest to the front of the bed. It kind of breaks up the annuals. And next year, I might decide to keep them in this area where I have them, but I might decide that I don't want to put the begonias right up next to them. But I'm okay with it for this year. I'd love to know, do you have this plant in your garden? It's a wonderful plant to have, either in the shade or the sun. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for watching this video. And if you've subscribed to my channel, I really truly appreciate it. Thank you for all your support. As always, if you have any questions or any comments, I'd love to hear from you. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.